the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com. My name is Todd DeWalt. It's my job to help construction business owners eliminate chaos and maximize revenue. I've got an interview for you today with Andy Neer. He is the president and CEO of Empire Contractors. They're a roofing company out of Michigan. And here's what you're going to get. You're going to learn how Andy thinks about social media. Actually, that's how we got connected. And he is crushing it on social media. And he's using it to get customers, to grow his team, and do some things that you might not be thinking about. We're also going to talk about company culture. You're going to hear about Andy's most expensive mistake. This is one you do not want to make. Trust me. We're also going to talk about leadership, mindset, and then there's an interesting group that Andy joined a few years ago that has been a real game changer for him. We're going to talk about that as well. So stay tuned for that interview. Before we get into that, I've got a few resources that I want to make you aware of. First of all, we ran out of time on this podcast, so because Andy is a wealth of knowledge for roofing contractors, we recorded some masterclass videos. So if you want to go deeper, if you are a roofing contractor or you're thinking about getting into residential or especially commercial roofing, then you need to go to constructionleadingedge.com/roofing. Get your hands on these free masterclass videos, probably about an hour of training from a guy who's been doing this for 20 plus years. You're going to learn about how to get around the skilled labor issue. You're going to learn how to create more time, how to get off the roof, get off the job site so you can have time to grow your business. Why you might want to make the jump into commercial roofing if you're a residential contractor. We'll also talk about a really interesting niche in the commercial roofing business that is high margin, low competition, and Andy highly suggests you get into. So if you want to watch those masterclass videos, you can get them for free. Go to constructionleadingedge.com/roofing, and you'll have instant access to them. The other thing I want to tell you about is this cool app that I demoed recently. It is Field Chat. And if you struggle with communication on job sites, like a lot of people do, then this thing will help you. Text messages are huge on job sites because they're great for getting information across quickly, and everybody knows how to text, right? But these messages are not stored in one place. They're hard to manage, hard to stay on top of, and because these messages and pictures aren't saved or organized or searchable, makes it impossible to refer to conversations later if there are ever disputes. Actually, I should say when there are disputes, because there will always be disputes. There's good news, though. I recently discovered this app called Field Chat. It is the ultimate text messaging platform for construction sites, period. That's all it does. It alleviates what I call the Bermuda Triangle of information between the field, the office, and the client. Has that ever happened to you where information from the field to the office just gets lost, or information from the client to you or from the client to the field gets lost? I call that the Bermuda Triangle. What Field Chat does is automatically organize all of your instant communications by project, giving you an organized and searchable history of all messages. It also integrates with text messaging so that it's easy to include anybody in the communication, whether it's someone on your own team that refuses to learn technology, or a trade or a sub that prefers just to keep using text messaging rather than downloading some newfangled software. So where was Field Chat when I ran my construction business? I needed a tool like this to keep our operations running smoothly. And frankly, I had to hack something together that didn't work quite as well as Field Chat. So instead of all these fragmented conversations that left important people out, and also left out the commitments that were made that I could no longer find proof of. So what does Field Chat mean for you? What it means is more time. It's going to accelerate your progress while reducing mistakes, reducing rework, and reducing chaos. And it's going to do that by making project communications more effective. Right now, Field Chat's offering you, the Construction Leading Edge podcast listener, 15% off. Just go to fieldchat.com/EDGE. Make sure and tell them that Todd sent you, and it looks like there's a free trial. So go to fieldchat.com/edge, get your free trial, see how it feels to have communications that free up more of your time. One last thing I want to tell you about is I want to read something to you that I received from one of my clients who attended the advance. This is from Ryan, and I want to share this with you because I want to get some resources in your hands. Here's what Ryan said. He said, the advance is packed full of great ideas. This was the advance in-person live event that I had in Fort Myers, Florida in April 2019. He said, it's full of ideas that will save you hundreds of working hours and tons of money. Here's the part I want you to listen to. 2 ideas alone have saved me 6 hours this week alone. He sent me this 3 days after the event. So 2 ideas alone have saved me 6 hours this week alone, not to mention the other 3 sales reps we have. As a company, we've saved 18 man-hours alone on the sales side. Before coming to the event, I thought I needed 2 more sales reps. After leaving, I realized I didn't, and that our office was just asking the wrong questions and sending our reps to unqualified leads. I've since trained my staff on the right questions to ask in order to make sure our clients are more qualified and the work more profitable. What are those questions? What is this process? I don't have time to get into it on this podcast, but the good news is you can get your hands on those questions. You can get free sales training. All you got to do is go sign up for a free 10-day trial of the Construction Business Accelerator program at constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. Once you get in there, you'll find all of that information. You'll find those things that Ryan traveled to Fort Myers, Florida to get. You'll find the questions and the process that they've put in place inside the construction or the contractor sales accelerator portion of the Construction Business Accelerator. So go to constructionbusinessaccelerator.com, get your free trial. You're going to get all that information. You're going to get those questions, the process that helped Ryan and his team save 18 hours in 3 days. Plus, you're going to get a whole lot of other stuff: the revenue maximizer, the crew productivity booster, the cash flow solution, the mindset upgrade, the project execution formula. You'll get free access to all that stuff for 10 days. So go do that before I change my mind and take away this free trial, because every time I talk about it, I think that's ridiculous that I'm giving that stuff away. But I want to help you out. So go to constructionbusinessaccelerator.com, get your free 10-day trial of that program, and maybe you'll get the same kind of results that Ryan did. So now, without further ado, let's get into the interview with Andy Neer from Empire Contractors. All right, Andy, thanks for being on the podcast. How are you doing this morning?
Living the dream, doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good deal. So, yeah, my pleasure. We got connected on social media and a few months ago, which we'll talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about company culture, some expensive mistakes, but good place to start is just talk about your story, what kind of business you're in, and kind of how you got there.
Okay. So we've been in business for 21 years, actually, of last week, I think it was. Started in 98. I started out as a cool part of my story is I left a job when I was 23 years old and had 4 kids at home and a stay-at-home wife. And so that was my sole income. I thought I was high on the world with 3 jobs in my pocket, 3 jobs in my pipeline. And the best advice that anybody ever gave me was my dad. I asked him if I should go out on my own. He said, do it while you're young and stupid, because when you're 35 years old, you'll be too smart to take the risk. And so I jumped in, and I had been doing weekend and night warrior jobs for the last year before that. And so I knew that I could make more money working on my own and instead of working for somebody. So I think anybody that has an entrepreneurial spirit kind of knows that, they might not be the best employee, so they just got to work for themselves. So 1998, I started on my own. We pretty much did anything exterior: decks, windows, soffit, fascia, siding, roofing. But it was over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, I really started specializing, gravitating towards roofing, because that's where the money was. That's where most of the other contractors didn't want to do the roof. They wanted to do the easier work. And so we got good at doing roofing, found out that's where we could make the money at. We got really good at shingles, metal, standing seam metal shingles. And then a few years later, we started doing light commercial jobs. basically just EPDM, 40 to 50 square projects, nothing major. And then 2004, my wife and I, the marriage, or our marriage was really taking the business was taking a really big toll on my marriage. So we ended up liquidating the company, selling the company. I got a storm restoration gig doing sales only in Texas. And we did that for about 4 or 5 months. And I realized that was not my forte. But I think God sent me down there to realize, how to drive in Houston traffic and how to learn the claims side of the business for insurance, and really a different concept of how to sell in a little bit more motivated, high pressure environment. So that was a great learning lesson. And we ended up moving back to Michigan. I worked for a couple of factories for the next year or two, and then realized I just couldn't work for somebody else. I had to dive back into doing my own job. So I started the company back up again. Very quickly in a year, got it back to where it was before. And then one of my ex-employees that I still was good friends with, he wanted to start his own roofing company. So I started grooming and helping him. And he wanted to do something that had a little bit less of a competition to it instead of shingles and metal. So he wanted to look at a foam machine. Well, we found out that was going to be 60 to 80 grand, and he didn't have that. So we looked at other options, and he decided, let's look at roof coating. And so it just happened to be that our supplier had a customer that was looking to do a coating job, and they didn't have any contractors that were doing the area. And so they kind of got us connected with the customer, sold us the product. The Graco, we use Graco spray equipment. So I bought a machine on eBay fairly cheap, and still have that piece of equipment today. But we bought a rig on eBay, and the Graco rep came up and showed me how to use the machine, but I didn't have any training from the manufacturer themselves. We were kind of on our own how to install this coating. We did some research online and read the side of the buckets and stuff like that. But so we did that for the next 4 or 5 years. Our arrangement between me and him was I sold the jobs, and then I subbed them to him, and he did the jobs as a subcontractor. And it worked out very well, made some good money. And that was really my introduction in doing bigger jobs, 150, 200 square jobs. I'd never done that before. I didn't know how to get into those jobs. After about 4 years, he realized that he was more comfortable doing metal and shingles, and he was filling up the schedule with those jobs. So he sold his equipment back to me, and we started doing it in-house. And then one particular job in 2015, I'll make this story as short as possible, but it went backwards. We got done with the job, looked great, but the guy called about a week or two later and says that we got more leaks in our building than you did before you did the project. So I went back and, took my bucket and looked for suspicious areas, did what I could. Well, that happened about 4 or 5 times. I kept going back. I could not figure out why this thing was leaking. One weekend, it rained about 6 inches of rain all weekend. And Monday morning, he called me and says, we didn't have a drop of rain in the facility. So whatever you did, you fixed it. I'm like, oh, I don't know what I did, but cool, I got it. About 8 days later, it hadn't rained for 8 days. And he says, Andy, it's kind of a cold morning, but it's sun shining out and it's raining in my facility. And so that's when I realized it was the condensation issue. Now, I didn't know anything about checking for a condensation or a vapor barrier. And what happened is this building had a condensation issue before, but because it had a corrugated steel roof and it was, it had gaps and, things in it that allowed the air to escape. It did create condensation on the bottom of the panel, but it never enough to drip down in the facility. I put the coating on, not knowing that I needed a vapor barrier, and we went up inside there, and the whole bottom of the roof was just teeming with water droplets everywhere. And we basically sealed that building up like a drum, and all the humidity is going back into the building. So I ended up trying to call the manufacturer, and they wouldn't help me at all. No support. They basically told me, did you read the side of the bucket? And I'm like, there's only so much information there. And so I went and talked to the supplier, even though I knew they wouldn't help me out, but I talked to the supplier and they wouldn't help me out either. So I turned into my insurance company. I had to pull some strings, but they ended up replacing the whole roof, and I put a new metal roof on it. But we took care of the customer, but the next week I was online looking for a new roof coating manufacturer with two things in mind. First thing being that they had training that I could go to and physically learn how to put this product on and learn from somebody and not on my own. And the second thing I wanted is ongoing support after the training to know, hey, it might be 6 months or a year down the road, 2 years down the road. I want to know that if I have a question, I can get somebody to answer the question I have. And so I went into those two things, researched it quite a bit, and I had a couple guys reach out to me from, it was from the Conklin company. And we talked one night about 9 o'clock for an hour, and I researched it some more and found out that that was going to be a good partner. So we ended up partnering up with Conklin, and then it was from there that they taught me not only how to apply the product, but how to talk to building owners, how to write a contract, how to write an estimate, how to market myself, how to brand myself, how to build my website, and everything from A to B in my roofing business. And that's really kind of opened my eyes and opened the doors to commercial roofing.
Yeah, very cool. Unfortunate about the roof that went sideways. Yeah, we'll talk.
Well, you don't fail, you learn, right?
Yeah, those success does not a good teacher make, but mistakes mistakes are definitely a good teacher. Yeah, I want to talk some more about the Conklin company and what that's done for you and some of the other people on your team as we go on. But let's talk about let's go back to one thing you said. You said, I realized I wouldn't make a good employee, or you had this realization that you needed to start your business back up after you had shut things down and worked for somebody else. There are a lot of people listening to this podcast who are probably in that situation. They feel like they need to be on their own. They've got this thing inside them that wants to be an entrepreneur, but they're still working for somebody. How would you, if you had a couple of minutes with them, what questions would you ask them, or what advice would you give them to help them decide when it's the right time to make that jump?
Well, first question I would ask them, and I actually did a video on Facebook yesterday on this topic, was what goals do you have? Because if you don't have goals, and when I talk to people, they're always like, oh yeah, I got goals, blah, 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 blah. But I always tell people, those aren't goals. Those are dreams. Those are just aspirations you have. But you didn't put any concrete to them. I mean, have you written them down? That's always the first thing I write people. If you have goals, show me where you have them written down. Well, I don't have them written down. What are your real numbers? Like, how much in sales do you want to do next year? Do you have that number? Is it 2 million? Is it 4 million? How much sales do you want to do this month? Like, they haven't put any plan to it. There's no plan. So that's the first thing I would say is, the question I would ask of you, because if you don't know where you're going, there ain't no way you're gonna get there. And so, but the advice that I would give is, you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to have a 4-year degree. I was not only a poor employee, I was a poor student. I got a 1.8 grade average in high school. I barely graduated. And unfortunately, my father required all of my sisters to go to college, but the boys, it was like, it was optional. We didn't have to go to college. And so I went to Voc Center at the encouragement of a friend of mine. I was raised on an apple farm, okay? And I thought I was going to be a farmer. And after I graduated, I went to a vocational center as a 13th year student, and that's where I fell in love with construction. I could build stuff with my hands. I'm a little bit of an artist, so I have a creative mind, and I like producing something with my hands. And so that's why I really love doing that. But it was a 2-year program, and I quit after the first year because I had a family to feed, and I had to get out in the workforce and start generating income. And so, but that vocational center was what sparked my career and gave me that passion for construction trades. And but I constantly tell people, you don't have to be smart. People see what I'm doing and they're like, oh, you must be really good at this and really good. I'm really good at explaining the dream and doing sales, but I'm horrible at book work. I'm horrible at doing the finances. So I hire people to do those things in those areas. But I think a misconception is a lot of people, they think they got to be good at all those things. They got to be good at this. They got to be good at that. And I know you can't hire everybody to do stuff right at the beginning, but you have to have this mentality of I'm willing to take a risk, and as long as I work hard enough, I can't really fail. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, I've talked to a few guys, and it's like some people, they have this idea in the back of their mind that, well, I could fail. I don't know what it is about my brain, but when I embark on something, I cannot see myself failing. It's like not an option in my head. I can't see myself failing. And I don't think it's like because I'm cocky or confident. It's just because I might be naive that I'll just work harder. I'll just put in more hours. I'll just ask more people. I'll just whatever until I see it through. So if you have that ambition, how do you know that you can be an entrepreneur or maybe start your own thing? I told you in between my two businesses, I worked for a couple factories, and I was on the line polishing turbines for aircraft, and it was a union shop. So you had to do X amount of parts per hour. And I remember doing these turbines, and they'd be like, okay, well, we got to make 32 of these an hour. I'm like, okay, cool. So we Well, we'd get done, and they'd say, okay, we made 32 parts. We can't start the next segment of parts until 15 minutes. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, we have a quota to meet. I said, yeah, but we could make another 10 parts. Oh, no. Then the engineers will come down here and tell us that they're going to raise our quota because now they know we can do 42 parts an hour. That did not equate with me. I'm like, I mean, I understand how union, they want to have a pace. They got a quota, and it's all part of a bigger scheme. But for me, I was like, I had these ideas how things could be better, how things could be ran smoother, how to keep people busy when they were not working. But nobody wanted to hear my ideas, my grand ideas. And that's what my dad used to say. That's why I'm self-employed, because nobody else would agree with my grand ideas. And so, but I think every entrepreneur has that. It's like, I have these ideas and I have ambition, but you kind of have to be your own boss to implement them if they're kind of out there ideas, rogue ideas. So.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I would agree. And one thing that I've found in my career, a mindset change that I made a few years ago was I used to think it was all about having the right idea. Like if I had the right idea, then everything was going to go easy. It would be an instant success. And then every time I ran into resistance or things didn't go as quickly as I thought, then I would get frustrated because I thought it was all about the idea. And then about 4 years ago, I realized it's not about the idea. Frankly, ideas are a dime a dozen. It's all about the execution. And you can take just about any idea if it's reasonable. And if you execute on it well enough and long enough, it's going to succeed. So then I realized, okay, I actually want it to be difficult, because if it's all about execution, then my competition is going to give up sooner than I am. And if I just persevere and I don't quit, then I'm going to succeed. But
yep.
It's not about the idea. It's not about one little piece of information. It's just about execution and hustle. And so that's good advice. So one of the things the way we got connected, one of the things I think you're really good at is social media. So talk a little bit about your approach to social media, how you think about it, like how you use it, and your advice for contractors who would like to get more benefit from social media.
Well, first of all, I use Facebook for social media. Well, let's talk about Facebook. I use Facebook probably 95% business, 5% social, personal. LinkedIn is 100% business. Instagram is probably 80% business. So social media I use primarily for business. I run into a lot of people and I'll say, hey, can I connect with you on Facebook, or can I message you? And they'll say, oh, I don't have Facebook. They talk to it like they down it. There's too much ignorance on there. There's too much rumors on there. There's too much. They say all this stuff, but it's like you don't have to get involved into that. I mean, the way I look at it is when I'm putting stuff on social media, I am pouring into it. Yeah, there's other garbage there, but you don't have to engage into it. You don't have to be a part of it. But you got to remember, many of those people are going to be recipients of what you're selling, or maybe somebody you could network with. And especially in my arena where you got roofers, they're very vulgar. They got a lot of profanity. They talk about a lot of crap that I don't necessarily want to talk about, but yet that doesn't make them people that I can't work with. You know, I all my, employees, some of them are going to act a certain way, be a certain way that I'm not going to advocate for, but at the end of the day, they still get the work done. You know, I mean, they're still good employees. So you got to use social media like it's just a tool. It's a tool to get the job done. And so when I talk to contractors, I encourage them, if you want to grow your business or grow, we all have different structures in our business, however that is. But the key in 2019 is when you're building your business, or you're building your team, or you're trying to get more information, you've got this platform in social media, namely Facebook and LinkedIn, that gives you access like we've never seen in the history of this planet. I mean, you have access to knowledge and resources that your grandparents would have killed for. I mean, I always refer back to like Christopher Columbus sailed across the Atlantic to reach this country. Can you imagine if he had what you have at your fingertips? This thing costs, a few $100s a month, or maybe $100 a month, and we use it for texting and stupid stuff. And it's got apps on it. It's got things on it that can make your business more efficient. You can connect to 1 billion people around the world, customers. You can promote yourself, and people don't see that they're holding a gold mine in their hand. And same thing with social media. You're having access to people that even your parents didn't have access to 15 years ago. And that's so underrated. It's so underrated.
Yeah. So if somebody there's a contractor out there and they're not really using social media for their business, what's a good way to get started on, where would you start? Would you start with Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram? And if so, how would you advise them to get started?
Well, the very first thing you need is a website. So I know there's a lot of people that don't have a website. In fact, if they do have a website, it's a website that's just stale. It's sitting there, no traffic going through it. The reason I say that is because if you're going to be active on social media, what's the first thing that if somebody says, I'm going to check Todd DeWald out. I want to see what kind of guy he is. I want to see what does he offer? There's no website to go to. There's nothing to tell your story unless they have to physically talk to you. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people they'll talk to you, but they want third-party verification. The website's almost like a third-party verification to say, okay, what he's saying is matching what's on his website, and I can read it at my own leisure. I can read it at my own time. I can pick it apart. I can check to make sure there's no differences between, or maybe I can compare it with his website, or to maybe somebody else is doing what he's doing. So in order to be active on social media, you're going to have a website, so that when people are ready to make a decision, they're going to check you out. Mm-hmm. Now, whether that's a roofing contractor like me doing business, because you know that they're going to somebody's going to drop $200,000 on a roof, is going to want to go online. They're going to look up your website. They're going to want to see what pictures, what jobs you've done, at what level of jobs have you done, mm-hmm. maybe what your crew looks like. There's a picture. There's 1,000 words in a picture, right? And so that would be the number one thing, is say get a website and make sure it's done, not just so it's there, but it's actually active and you're driving traffic through it. Yeah. There's a lot of people out there that are using GoDaddy, and they want to build websites for $300, and that's good if you're just starting out and you need something tomorrow, but you better get one that's legitimate within the first year. And then once you're on social media, the best advice that I can tell you when you're on social media is 4 words that I use, and it's called kill them with kindness. Anytime I'm commenting, anytime I'm maybe debating with somebody, or a rebuttal of what they said, disagreeing, or any post that I do, I make sure that I always hold to the axiom of kill them with kindness. Sometimes I get people that will say nasty stuff to me, or they'll comment nasty stuff on there, or they'll screenshot my face and put it on another page and say some bad. I mean, I don't know why people do these things, but it's more critical what your response is to those, because if you're going to be active on social media, you're going to create a reputation, a perception that people have of you. And the best perception people are going to have of you is when people attack you and how you respond. And so sometimes I don't comment at all, or sometimes I'll just kind of laugh with them and be like, haha, that's a good one. But it didn't take long. I engaged on a lot of several of these roofing forums, and it took about 3 or 4 months for me to kind of get in the crowd, to be you get accepted. It doesn't matter if it's in high school or on social media, the group has to accept you, and then they start accepting you as one of their own. And some people, it never happens, but if you want that to happen where you can actually connect with them, you've got to be able to create this perception that you're there as a good person.
Yeah.
You're not there to cause distress to people, to tear people down. Some people find that funny, but the bulk of people are not going to find that funny. So
yeah, that's good advice. And go ahead, a couple of comments. One thing that I've seen and contractors need to understand is that by the time a customer contacts you, they could have already made their buying decision. Gone are the days of somebody calling you and then starting the buying decision process. They're checking you out. They're looking at pictures, galleries, Google reviews, Facebook reviews. There's so much of the buying process that's happening before they contact you. And you got to ask the question, what are they making that decision based on? I've looked at builders and remodelers websites that haven't been updated since like 2008. And it's nothing. For one, they're ancient, and they don't represent what the company does anymore. So I absolutely agree. You need to have at least a basic website that is somewhat updated, reflects what you do, and can answer the question. Like, I was an owner's rep for a long time, and I would hire contractors. So somebody asked me once, what should I have on my website? This was a big commercial firm. So here's what I'm looking for. Are you in business? Are you legitimate? Can you do the type of work I'm looking for? Do you work in my geography? What do other people think about you? And if your website can cover that gives you some legitimacy, that keeps you at the table. If you've got an old, crappy website or no website, if you have no website, it looks like you're out of business. So yeah, definitely agree. And kill them with kindness. I love that approach. I've had quite a few haters. Well, not quite a few. A very noisy, annoying minority of people will jump on my Facebook posts and stuff, just say ridiculous stuff. And my favorite thing to do is that, kill them with kindness.
Yeah, I learned that from Grant Cardone. Grant Cardone, I listened to him a little bit, and I remember one particular thing he said is, sometimes people get on my posts and they'll hate on it. And he's like, I love haters. That means that I'm making an impact. People are watching me, whether they hate me or they like me, they're watching me. And, Gary V and Grant, they talk about exposure. They talk about attention, and attention's good. What do they say? Good press or bad press, all press is good. And so if you're trying to be an influencer, or you're trying to be, get more attention on there, it's good to have haters. So once I got that trick clicked in there, I had a one guy that he did a really bad post on me. He made a comment on there that really, I can't remember what it was, but he said something bad. And I said underneath that, like, oh, awesome, I finally got my first hater. Today's a good day. Something like that. And, how do you respond to that? Like, because I didn't bite onto his negativity, and I just rolled with it. And then other people see that comment and they're like, wow, Andy, it's hard to get him riled up. Like, and then after a while you create this perception that you're easy to talk to. You're not a jerk, but you're helpful. I mean, and that'd be another thing that I would say. If you want to have a presence on Facebook, try to comment on as much things as you can. Something. what is it? Gary Vaynerchuk says he does the, is it the the $1.80 a day? It's $1.80 a day. And basically he says what that is 90, you want to give your 2 cents on LinkedIn 90 times. So 90 times 2 cents, you give your 2 cents on LinkedIn, which I think is a ton. I tried to do that and I'm like, I don't know, I don't have time to put 90 comments on LinkedIn, but I get where he's going with it. And that was to, a lot of times we'll see a post and we'll like it or we'll just scroll by or whatever. But if that's somebody that you think is in your market, he's a possible prospect, he's somebody that you think you could engage with, just don't go after him and say, hey, I got a product you can have and here it is. Or the worst thing is to private message them unsolicited, without them asking. That's a big no-no. And so what you do is you slowly, comment on their things and, hey, that is a great looking job. Or, hey, I noticed that project is really clean. Kudos to you. You got to do more than just a thumbs up or great job. I mean, those are kind of empty comments. They don't really gain you anything. You want to have something that's got some substance to it. And after a while, people will start noticing that you are somebody that really cares, that really is empathetic towards what they're doing. And then, like you said, when they're ready to pull the trigger, ready to do something, I just had a guy yesterday. He said he's a $50 million roofing company, and he said, Andy, we're sitting in our offices, in our management offices, talking about all we do is residential, but we've been scared to get into commercial. But we figured if we're going to get into commercial, we want to dip our toes in by using coatings. And you're the first guy that came to my mind. And he sent me a message right from the meeting right there. How did I earn that opportunity to have my name flash in his mind at that meeting? It's because he's seen me enough times post on social media with positive content.
Yep, absolutely. And I think what I tell my clients is if you want to grow your business with social media, it's a different approach. Because if you're, from a personal standpoint, you're scrolling through Facebook, Instagram, and you're looking for cool stuff. You're like, oh, that's cool. That interests me. But the business approach, the Gary V $1.80 approach is different. You're going to be strategic about the people you want to develop relationships with. So if you're a remodeling contractor and you want to build partnerships with architects, interior designers, real estate agents, you be strategic about those folks. And then you go find their posts and you find, instead of waiting until you see something interesting, you find something interesting about every post you can. And you're intentional about commenting. And yeah, it taps into reciprocity where you're giving value, you're giving props, giving kudos. And people like that. Everybody likes it. Everybody looks for those notifications, right? So like, oh yeah, this Andy guy. Yep. And that's always been my business development target is chances are pretty low right now. Somebody wants to buy from me, but 6 months down the road, I want to be the guy that they think of first when they do need to buy something. I want to be at the top of their mind and have built some capital with them, built some relationship and given some value to them. So yeah, I love that. Kill them with kindness, give massive value, and you can't go wrong. It's, you reap what you sow, treat other people the way you want to be treated. That stuff's always going to come back to you. So good stuff there. So let's talk about.
Let me share something really quick. We were at a home show a few weeks ago, and this other big commercial roofing company was at the home show, and my guy that I just hired as my residential sales guy / financial officer, he was up at the home show with me. Well, he used to be the sales rep for a supplier here in town, and so he went over to say hi to this other roofing company because he knew him from the past. He goes up to him and he says, "Hey, Jeremy, how's it going?" He's good. He goes, "I hear you're working with Empire now." He goes, "Yep." And he's like, "What the heck? You didn't even let us know that you were looking to go with a roofing company." And he's like, it worked out. Andy and I have known each other for a while. And the guy's like, "So what's he doing? Teaching you how to do the Facebook and all that stuff?" And I'm thinking, how does this roofing company know that I'm doing, because he's not, I'm not pitching to roofing companies, but I'm putting enough stuff out there that even my competition is taking notice. And that gave me just a little bit of satisfaction inside knowing, because I know they're not doing any Facebook at all. And they still look at it as a novelty. So now this job that I'm looking at, like I said, the company's like, yeah, we got a bid from them, but we don't really like what they're offering. Then that helps me to know that I'm winning. I'm winning because I'm getting exposure out there. I'm gaining ground. Yeah, they've been in this commercial game for 30 years, but they've got to evolve. And part of the evolving is taking advantage of social networking.
Yeah, and one really overlooked benefit or purpose of social media is recruiting. Doing all the things
Yeah.
you talked about also gets noticed by your future employees. So if you want to grow your team and find good people, then doing the things we talked about works as well. But then I've also advised people, if you want to go find a superintendent or a project manager or somebody that's really hard to find, then you may not just be able to post a job on Indeed or some job board.
They won't walk in the door and sign an application.
Probably not. They're probably pretty happy. They're employed. They're not looking at Indeed. But if you strategically go after those people and follow them on LinkedIn, connect with them on Facebook, like their stuff, give them value, warm them up, build relationship, then at some point they might become an employee of yours. So yeah, it's a different mindset. Looking at social media as a tool instead of a novelty and a way to get into political debates and look at cat videos and that kind of stuff. It's extremely powerful, definitely.
The 3 people that are in my office did not apply for the job. I recruited all of them. They already had another job when I recruited them. Lazaro, I had to take out for dinner 9 times.
Wow.
And now he's my production manager. Ed was a supplier sales rep. I had to take him out for dinner once 2 years ago, and it wasn't the right timing for him. And then he came back around last fall and said, I think now the timing's right. Let's continue this conversation. So it doesn't happen overnight. But when you recruit people, you get people that you see their good attributes and you go after them. And they already have a job, so you know that they are not people that are revolving doors, that go to job to job to job. So I love the recruiting aspect. It doesn't work for every position, but when you want good talent, I love the recruiting.
Yeah, definitely. And I can, if I look back on my career for, I don't know, they were like for 15 years before I started my own business, every job somebody approached me through a referral. It came to me, and it was because of those relationships. So yeah, you definitely can't underestimate the value of relationships.
And can you imagine how that relationship starts from an employee's perspective? Because it starts with the perspective of they wanted me.
Yeah.
Whereas employees come and fill an application, it's I want them. I want to work here. But when you recruit somebody, it's wow, this company wanted me. And the idea, the perspective on that is totally different. Oh, yeah. You go into it being more of a team player.
Yeah, definitely. And they feel, and I think in the industry right now, good employees are like customers. They can pick and choose wherever they want to go, and they need to be treated like customers. They need to be marketed to like customers, and you got to go build a relationship because they can go wherever they want to. And it's not like it was in 2009. If you needed somebody, you could probably just post a job. And I talk to a lot of people who say, I'm posting jobs, but I'm just getting a bunch of crap resumes. I'm like, well, who are you marketing to? Unemployed people? You're getting resumes from people in India and Pakistan for your job. Like, it just doesn't work anymore. You've got to use a different method, and social media is certainly a great way to do that.
Yep.
Let's talk about mistakes, expensive mistakes. So when you think of most expensive mistake I've ever made in business, what comes to mind?
That's an easy one because it was a 4-year process. Back in 2008, I had one of my good guys working for me. We had a slow winter, and one particular day in January, I had laid everybody off for 3 weeks. Might have been a month, and I decided that we were going to not pay our liability I thought that because I didn't have anybody working, I could just cancel my work comp insurance and then pick it back up when my guys go back to work. So I did that. Well, they canceled me for non-payment of premium. Well, in Michigan, when they cancel you for non-payment of premium, apparently that at that time they put me in the pool. So, which was like, okay, no big deal. Well, March, I went to go back to start doing a job. Remember the day, it was March 24th. I went back to start doing a job. But the Wednesday before, I went to my agent and said, hey, going to start working. I got a job starting on Monday, and I want, here's my check. I'm ready to start my premium back up. And so I gave my check, and we were up and rolling. And then Monday morning, I roll into the job. It's a new construction job, 2 stories tall. And the crew was working on another house in town, but me and my foreman went out to dry this house in. And I get there, and I say, oh, shoot. I need you to just hang out here, get all the tools up to the floor. I've got to run to the other side of town and get it was either the ropes or the harness, or one or the other. We were missing something to get our ropes and harnesses up there. And so this is a pretty smart guy, so he knows how to put 2 and 2 together. Probably just as smart as me as far as, he wasn't just a laborer, so even he was a pretty smart guy. For whatever reason, he was overly ambitious that morning and decided to go up on the roof and sweep the fine layer of snow off the roof. It was a 612, and he thought he'd be ready for me when we get back, and he wanted to stay ahead of the game and be prepared. Well, I get back, and he's walking across the driveway holding his arm, and he had started sliding off the roof. He couldn't stop himself. He jumped off the roof at the edge, hopefully to grab the tree. He bounced off the tree. He bounced off the neighbor's house fascia, landed on the ground, blacked out for about 10 minutes. And then when I showed up, he was a mess. So put him in the truck, drove him to the hospital. On the way to the hospital, I called my insurance agency and said, hey, I just want to let you know that there was an accident. I'm on the way to the hospital. I want to make sure everything's good. He's like, yep, everything's good. Keep us posted what's going on. So I went to the hospital, got him taken care of. And then Friday, 4 days later, my agent calls me and says, oh, by the way, that accident on Monday was not covered because you fell on Monday, but your check didn't process and your policy didn't start until Tuesday morning. So I had $100,000 plus claim on my insurance, and my guy wasn't covered. And so we had a lawsuit start there, or work comp, a lawsuit between me, the employee, the general contractor's job that I was working on, and the insurance company. We had 4 parties involved, and everybody was pointing the finger at everybody else, and everybody had a little bit of fault in it. Okay, the guy shouldn't have been up there. Hey, I shouldn't have allowed him to get up there, and I should have made sure my policy was in hand and ready to go. The general contractor should have made sure that we had an up-to-date policy in his files before he allowed us on the job site. And of course, the insurance company, because I gave him my check, he told me he mailed it in and had it all taken care of, and he told me I was good to go. So that process ended up lasting 4 years. And it wasn't so much the money, because it didn't. The lawsuit ended up going against the general contractor, and his work comp paid for it, which rose his premiums. So the only money out that I had was me and the general contractor had an agreement that over the next 2 years, I would pay him back. I would deduct off of the cost of my jobs that I did for him, whatever he incurred in extra premiums. It was like $7,000 a year that he was paying more. So I just, $1,000 here, $1,000 there. But the real loser was the employee, because he had a pile of papers up to here that, work comp wasn't getting paid. It's still in process. It's in court. And, his doctors were giving him the runaround because he didn't have proper insurance. And so I really, my heart went out to him that he got the short end of the stick. I did what I could. We kept him busy doing limited jobs for the next few years. And he ended up leaving us about 4 years after that happened, and went to work somewhere else at a hardware store. But, Yeah, that was one incident that after that happened, I say, the number one thing in this company that gets done before anything else is paid is, work comp policy has to get paid. Number two is payroll has to get paid. Vendors and other bills and other stuff, that's all secondary. But we cannot, put in danger this company for this thing happening, because that was just to show me that the worst things can happen at the most inconvenient times. Accident on Monday, policy starts Tuesday morning. I mean, how ironic do you get than that?
Yeah, that is a valuable mistake. Very expensive mistake. Speaking of mistakes, you work with a lot of contractors. What are some of the most common mistakes that you see contractors make in business, whether that's whatever that is, the things that really stand out to you about the way contractors are running their business, either things they're not doing they should be or things they're doing wrong?
Number one would be not putting enough money away for a reserve or a rainy day. Sometimes I'm even guilty of that. And the one way I've overcome that is because, my dad was a farmer, so he only got paid 4 or 5 times a year. You got harvest in July, you might not get paid till February. You get harvest in September, you might not get paid till next July. So he was very frugal with his money and was able to put money away and not tap into it. I didn't have that ability. I was a contractor, and so I was always like, I had $20,000 in my account and I felt on top of the world. So I'd go buy another piece of equipment or do some advertising or something. So I had to force myself to learn how to save up money for rainy days. And I did that by using, like technology. Nowadays you have automatic payments and you have ways that you can set up. So I pull a paycheck every week. I'm kind of on salary, but I pull a paycheck every week, the same amount. But then also I have automatic debit go straight to another account at a different bank that I don't frequent that saves up money for my taxes. And then I have another amount that goes to another bank that saves up money for a rainy day, just so that it's automatically taken care of. I don't have to worry about, oh man, I don't have the $200 a week to put away this week. It's just done. I just expect it. And so sometimes if you don't have the habit of doing something, you just need to make the decision of, I'm going to create this process that forces me to do the action. And it helps you. I mean,
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. I did the same thing when I was running a company a few years ago. Guy brought me in to run his company. He had a tendency, he made decisions based on bank account balance, like big buying $40,000, $50,000 pieces of equipment, not looking at AR, AP, any of that kind of stuff. So we sort of hacked the system and said, all right, we're going to put 15 or 20% away in a retained earnings account that's not in the operating fund. And that made things go a lot easier. He didn't change his behavior necessarily. He was still looking at the account, but he could still do that stuff. But we had money socked away for taxes and when cash flow got a little tight in the winter time and things like that. So yeah, I love the idea of repetitive, set up automatic investments, automatically put money when money comes in, take it off the top instead of waiting to see if you got anything left. That's the best way to make sure that you don't run out. So let's talk about leadership. I started this podcast about 5 years ago, primarily talking about leadership, and it seems to be a common theme. So what's your approach to leadership? How do you think about leadership? It's kind of a broad question, but I'll just throw that out there. How do you think about leadership?
Well, I like to use the term servant leadership, just because if you do domineering leadership where just you can dominate and expect people to do things by fear or by expectation or just drill it into them. But if you're not like a servant, what do I mean by servant leadership? So a few weeks ago, my new Ed, my financial officer, he's still trying to get his bearings in our office and how I do things. So the key to delegating is how do you get people to do things the way you would want them done in your absence, right? And so I kind of want that mindset. How would Andy do this if he's not here? If he's on vacation for a week? And so he made a comment about, hey, Andy, you had some draws last week. I just wanted to know what those were for. And I said, well, I took this draw out to give this guy a bonus, and I took this draw out because I needed some extra cash. And he goes, oh, okay. And he goes, I don't want to pry. You know, it's your money. Whatever you want to do with it, it's your money to do what you want with. I said, whoa, stop right there. It's not my money. My money comes in a paycheck that I get every week to go to my personal account. But this is Empire's money. So I don't, even though you're the financial officer, I don't want you ever to say to me, this is your money. Because I'm not employee, but like I'm a contributor here at Empire, just like everybody else is. And I cannot be above the line just because I'm the owner. And so I told him I want him to dispel that notion that it's my money, I can do what I want with. Because in a lot of cases, I don't think I'm alone here, that most owners and construction companies are their own worst enemy. They didn't get into it. They didn't get into doing construction because they were great at doing the books, or they were great at making leadership decisions or leading a great amount of people. They got into it because they were good at working with their hands and they could read a blueprint. And so, or maybe making customers happy. But that's not usually their strong suit, is being in leadership. So I think that day I was able to give him license to say, hey, if Andy's spending too much money in this area, or if he's being reckless doing this, I can tell him. If he needs to reduce the amount of salary he's taken, or if he needs to stop marketing so much, that I can tell him, and not be like, well, you know, he likes to do all this marketing and I'm just going to let him. That'll destroy a company if they cannot feel like they can talk to you about that. But it doesn't start with them. It starts with you by being transparent to them and giving them license and saying, hey, this is how I want you to interact with me. This is how I would like you to talk to me.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's one of the things I tell people when I talk to a construction business owner about my coaching program. I tell them, if you're like most people, you are your own worst enemy. And yep, like you said, the skill set that got you here to a certain point is not necessarily the skill set that's going to take you to the next level.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes the personality, that willingness to take on risk and be a little cowboy and drive and not be worried about the details, that will actually cut the other way. It's like a double-edged sword. It helps you to a certain point, but then it'll hurt you. And you've got to be able to bring people on that will fill in those gaps and address your weaknesses. Then you got to be able to delegate, to be transparent with those people. And that's a tough jump for some people to make because they're not self-aware enough to know that's where they're at. Yeah. So yeah, that's good advice. Any other thoughts on leadership that maybe servant leadership? I completely agree with that. Frankly, I think it's the only leadership that works. What is maybe one thing that you believe about leadership that some people in the construction industry might think is a little crazy?
Well, there's a verse in the Bible that says, without a vision, the people perish, which I also use as without a plan, people perish. So you got to have a vision and a plan in your company. There's two different words, but I mean, like a vision, people got to know that they're working to create something better, not just grinding to create another brick to put in another wall. They got to know that they're part of something bigger, and that's part of an owner or leader is to cast that vision. Mm-hmm. The second thing is you got to have a plan or a structure. And I think a lot of guys, I see so much frustration on social media about my guys can't do this and my guys can't do that and da-da-da. And I want to ask them, do your employees have a clear idea of what your expectation of them is? Do they know that when they get done with task number 4, that they are supposed to do task number 5? Do they know that that particular product is supposed to be stored on that shelf when they're done using it? And I have to admit, I fail in some of these areas too. But anytime an employee gets fired or quits or has a frustrating time in my company, I take it upon myself to say, I have failed them. Either I haven't given them correct training, I haven't given them the correct resources, I haven't given them the correct the right time. Maybe I have them in the wrong position. Maybe I haven't created a process for this thing that they're struggling with. It all falls back on the leader. Maybe I'm not going to create that process, but I've got to create an environment where my managers are willing to create a process so that the people that are doing the tasks that are falling through the cracks, they know how to do them without feeling like there's just too many people in companies that they're just like, I'm comfortable doing what I'm doing now, but when I'm done with this, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. And then they got to go ask somebody. Or they'll take the initiative and then they'll do the wrong thing. And their boss will be like, why did you do that? You weren't supposed to do that. And well, I was just trying to stay busy. So it's up to us to create that structure and that plan. And I know sometimes it sounds overwhelming, like, oh man, got to create this big strategy and this plan. Right now I'm in the middle of watching a series on Netflix called Turn, Washington Spies. Talks about the creation of the United States of America when George Washington, and it's cool to see all the tactics George Washington used. And I think sometimes we stumble in this thing like, oh, we got to have this big plan and tactic like we're going to go to war and everything's got to be. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Just start out with a small process. Like, where do the extra rolls of felt paper go when you bring them back to the shop? Mm-hmm. They should go in this little area here that's marked in yellow. Where do the garbage cans go? How often do the garbage cans get taken out? And who does them? Like, assign those things and create a process. And it doesn't have to be complicated, but it does need to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's great advice. So let's talk about Conklin. You're part of the Conklin team. Why did you get into that? Well, talk about that, what that means, how you're involved with Conklin, why you got into it, and maybe share what your experience has been, what it's done for your business, and somebody else that's on your team.
So at the beginning of the video, I reiterated that I had been using another coating manufacturer, but and the product was okay, but it was the training and the support and that kind of stuff. So that got me looking for another manufacturer. So I stumbled on Conklin as an accident. In my research, I had a guy connect with me named Ed Brown. And that's where I talked to him. I got registered for the training. I went out and did the training. And at that point in time, I just, this is another manufacturer I'm going to buy product from. No big deal. And then, but it was after I got back that it really changed the program. Was they followed up. And within a week or two, Jonathan, who is the head of our team, he contacted me and said, let's start working on how to start generating leads for you. Let's start finding out how to get more exposure for your company, marketing, branding. How's your website doing? And so not only did he help fill in the gaps for what I didn't know about product and creating more business, but he really was a motivator for me, keeping me accountable, keeping me on pace for what I wanted to do, which was ultimately get traction in the commercial roofing market. And so it's kind of funny when you're on, there's always people that are selling something and people that are buying something. And when you do that, you finally decide to start being part of a program, then the mentor and the teacher, the teacher and the student really starts playing, right? So like, doesn't matter what you're a part of, they're going to be like, well, you should do this and this and this. And at that point in time, you're like, well, I've never done that before, so I'm not sure if it's going to work. I don't trust you. This is new territory for me. And especially if people that are more veterans, that are older, it changes harder. And so he starts telling me, hey, you should market this way. You need to do this with your website. You need to do yada, yada, yada. You need to advertise this way. And so a lot of it was like, I've never done that before, and I don't think that's going to work. And so we had quite a few conversations where I debated a little bit and argued. But when it came out down to it, I had to come to the realization that I paid to be part of this program. I paid to be in this, and they've been where I haven't been. They know what I don't know. So it comes down to extracting knowledge so that I can gain knowledge. And so if this is a little word of wisdom for anybody that's out there that is in this. If you're going to sign up for a program, you're going to invest money. And people tell you to do step 1, step 2, step 3. No matter how you feel about it, no matter how you think about it personally, if they have data to prove that works, then do it, then try it. Now, that's part of being an entrepreneur and a business owner, is that it's not going to work 100% of the time, right? What works in Idaho might not work in Michigan, might not work in Florida. So, but if you have somebody that's already like, hey, I want to be there, and they have a step 1, step 2, step 3 with results, then all I got to do is step 1, step 2, step 3. I'll probably get similar results. And so the first time I did my marketing and working with my website, there was some, I'm pretty picky about design and how I want my website, right on down to the colors. Like, that's got to be Empire Red. That's like Coca-Cola red. It's got to be Empire Red. And so him working with me was like a little bit dicey, but at the end of the day, I had to realize he's done this hundreds of times before. And so I've got to trust his lead. And so I went with how he marketed. I went with our website design, and wouldn't you know it, 2 or 3 months later, I'm landing bigger jobs than I've ever walked in my life. I remember the first job I did, I used Concline, it was only 90 square. So I learned how to do the product on that one. But the next one I landed was 380 square. That might not sound big to a lot of people, but to me, it was like, I'm walking on this roof, and I'm literally thinking in my mind, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy to be walking on a 380 square roof. What do I think I'm doing trying to play in the big leagues? I'm not capable. I mean, all these doubts started going through my mind, but I started thinking, nope, just follow the steps that the team has taught you. And make a long story short, the owner ended up going with me, even though I was $10,000 more than the other guy, and he liked the other guy's product better, which blew my mind. But I just followed the steps, follow up, answer their questions, create rapport. And that really, after that whole experience, was like, you don't have to agree with your mentor's steps and advice and this and that. Don't discount it until you've proved it wrong. Just do what they are telling you to do. And so it was with that. And now I've been in it for 4 years, and now I get to be on the other side of it. Now I get to train other people and teach people what's worked for me and what's not worked for me. And I still, have the mentor role and the training role. I still have roofs that I look at that I don't have a clue what I'm doing. So I've got to call my team and say, hey, Sam, what do I do in this instance? And then, and so that's the beauty of having a network. With other manufacturers, I don't have that. I can't call up another contractor and say, hey, what kind of flashing tape do I use here? They ain't gonna tell me squat. Okay? I got to figure it out on my own. I got to watch a YouTube video, or I've got to call a manufacturer's rep. But guess what? The manufacturer's rep, they don't have experience with how to drop a contract, how to talk to a customer, how to, do a certain detail that might be unorthodox. And so these contractors will give you a different perspective because they're doing exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. And talk a little bit about the coatings industry. What's the difference? What is the roofing restoration business, the coatings business? What is it? Is it just for metal roofs? Is it on single ply roofs? What does that look like?
Well, the common misperception that I get from people is that it's paint. Oh, you're going to paint my roof. I get even customers that call me and say, hey, can you come paint my roof? And I got to tell them, we don't paint roofs. What we do is we apply liquid applied membrane. It's literally like the membrane sheets that come off the line of the manufacturer, except we're applying it in the field. We're using pumps, we're using technology, we have cure times and everything we got to deal with. And I always tell people, like, paint, an average paint thickness is about 4 to 5 mils wet. Ends up going down to about 2 mils when it's dry. But the coating that we're putting on is upwards of 26 mils when it's wet and about 16 to 18 when it's dry. If you introduce fabric, which we use fabric on the seams, that's upwards of 45 mils when it's dry. So it's a totally different animal. So when you're talking about coatings, when I first got into the industry, into coating, I didn't have a good or bad impression about it. It was new to me. I didn't even know it was such a thing. But I did think, this must be just for doing repairs, when you have an emergency repair. Then I quickly realized, after researching it some more, that these are actually systems that are warranted. And as long as you follow the process, it's just like any other product you put on or system you put on. You follow the process and you register the warranty, and you can get a nice 10, 15, 20-year warranty on the product. But I always relate it to restoring. Let's say you have an old classic muscle car. Let's say you got a 1969 Plymouth Roadrunner, and very common people know that you restore that car. But would anybody just take all the panels off and replace the panels? Yeah, we're gonna rebuild this car. We're gonna put all new panels on it. No, most of the time the panels are good. They just need to be blasted, primed, put Bono or resurface it so you get all the dents and scratches out. But you do what you need to do to bring it up, and then you follow a recipe. You put a primer on, you put a base coat on, then you might put 2 or 3 layers of top coat on, and you buff it out. So there's a recipe to it. And that's what I like about the Conklin product is that there are coating companies out there that say, yeah, we have a 1-coat product or we have a 2-coat product. And they want to neglect some of the process of like a primer or a base coat. And so I'll quickly run through a process of what the coating is. What we do is we power wash it with an agent called Rust Off, which removes all the film and debris and any scale that might be on the roof. And we power wash it with about 3,000, 4,000 PSI power washer. And then what the Rust Off also does is it etches the panel a little bit so that it gives the primer better adhesion to the panel. Once that's all done and dried, we go over the whole roof and put down a primer. Now, there's several different primers that are specific depending on which system you're doing. There's a primer for EPDM, there's a primer for mod bit, there's a primer for metal. So you want to use a specific primer. Once that's done, from here I'll talk to specifically metal roofs. We'll go over top of all the exposed fasteners with a Hershey Kiss or a dollop of coating on top of that metal fastener and cover that screw head entirely. Once that's done, we go around any penetrations with a caulking compound and make sure those are sealed up. Then the next step is we go over all the vertical seams and the horizontal seams. Many commercial roofs will have just vertical seams, but if the panels are long enough, they might have a horizontal seam. But anytime there's a vertical or horizontal seam, we do what's called a base coat fabric base coat. Very similar to like you do a drywall seam on a wall. You put the mud in, you inlay the fabric, and then you put mud on top of it, and you smooth it out. And that fabric is embedded in that, encased in that coating now. And so that's what strengthens those seams. That's where all of the elongation and expansion happens, is those seams. So it really makes those robust. And then once that's all done, we do a top coat over the whole roof. So it's really important that you have that recipe to make a good system, because if you're giving people a 10, 15, 20-year warranty, you got to make sure that there's enough millage. And so I tell the people, when it comes to coatings, the 2 things that you've got to watch for, the 2 reasons I see coatings fail is A, surface preparation. They don't get the surface clean enough to allow it to adhere and make contact and stick to the surface long term. That's the first thing. You got to have good surface preparation. The second thing is millage. You got to have enough millage thickness on there. And the reason is because when you're doing metal and shingles and single ply, the product comes to you already at the correct millage, the correct way. I mean, the shingle's already that thickness, the metal's already that thickness, and so you lay it down that way. But with liquid applied membranes, that's all on your hand. That's all on your shoulders. That you could be like, well, we're halfway done with this job, and I only got 2 barrels left. You're tempted to like thin it out a little bit, or make it stretch, or maybe you apply it one way, and then the next applicator walks too fast. So it's very critical that you put that millage thickness down at the specified rate, because if you put it down at 18 mils instead of 26, then that's going to break down in the future, and you're not going to, just imagine if you had laid a TPO product and you had a 5x5 area that was only 20 mils instead of 60. It's going to fail. And so that's very critical. But as far as being a sustainable product now, all you have to do is look to the major manufacturers and see who's buying up these coating companies. There's coating companies everywhere that are springing up. And these major manufacturers, Firestone, Carlisle, GAF, Sherwin-Williams, they're buying these coating manufacturers because they know that technology is the future of roofing. It's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna dominate roofing, but it's gonna be a huge player because there's more and more building owners that are like, my roof is coming of age, and I might only have a leak or two, but it's still got a good surface. It's still got it's still performing, but it's not going to perform forever. So a coating can come in and resurface that top and extend the life out, defer that cost out for another 20 years. And then when you're ready in 20 years, you can recoat that again without doing all of the fabric and the base coat and the primer. You can just clean it off, top coat it again, and defer that cost another 20 years. So it's a very attractive option for building owners that they might have a 100,000, 200,000 square foot building, and they're looking at tons of savings by just extending the life of their roof out.
Yeah, definitely. I spent several years running a sewer rehabilitation business, and we basically did the same thing to sewer lines and manholes. Instead of digging it up and replacing it, let's rehabilitate it. It's 50 to 80% good. Maybe it's got a few problems, but the cost and the impact of replacement is huge, which is the same way with businesses. Tearing off a roof is extremely expensive. You're putting a lot of stuff in the landfill. It doesn't need to be in the landfill. It's risky. And doing restoration and rehabilitation work just makes a lot of sense. So what we're going to do is we'll wrap this thing up in a minute, and you've agreed graciously to record a few like masterclass videos for people who are roofing contractors who are interested in growing their business, moving from residential into commercial, learn more about how this coatings business works. Maybe somebody wants to get into it. They don't necessarily have to be a roofing contractor, but we're going to talk about how to grow the business, how to solve some of the problems that roofing contractors are dealing with. And I'll have a link toward the end of this podcast on where to find those masterclass videos. But in the meantime, before we wrap up, I want to give people an opportunity to connect with you. So if they want to find out more about your business, connect with you on social media, get some more information about this Conklin opportunity. You're all over the place on social media, but where is the best place for people to go if they want to contact you?
Okay, I'll give you several. You can find me on Facebook under Andrew Allen Neer. I'm also on LinkedIn as Andy Neer. You can also find me on Instagram as Next Level Roofer. My website for our company is roofsbyempire.com. And then also, if you do want to do a little bit of research on the Conklin opportunity before you do call somebody, check out Choice Roof Contractor Group. That's a group that's a team of people put together in Conklin that we pool our resources together to get better marketing, better resources. Jonathan has weekly or biweekly phone calls talking about a myriad of topics, and he also records them. So we have a lot of archives of how to do cold calling, how to build a contract, how to talk to a customer, how to do better marketing, and so we have all these recorded phone calls. We also have links to products and sales aids. So if you want to check out Choice Roof Contractor Group, I'd encourage you to do that. There's a lot of good information and resources on that. If you want to, my email is andy.empirecontractors@gmail.com.
Cool. And so your website, roofsbyempire.com. So what I'll do is I'll put all those links in the show notes. And at the end of the episode.
You want me to have to put my phone number too?
If you'd like to, sure.
Yeah, my phone number is 231-578-4760. More than happy to talk for a few minutes. Somebody that's interested in doing it. It doesn't have to be about the Conklin opportunity. If it's something that you're, hey, how does this work for you? I love sharing experiences with guys. And I always tell people I share more from my failures and my successes. So, and I won't always have the answer to your question, but if there's something you ask me and I'm like, what, I just don't know much about that, but I can probably put you in touch with somebody that does know.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, I appreciate all that. I'll have links to all of that in the show notes at the end of this episode. I'll tell you, if you're listening, I'll tell you where you can go to get all of that stuff. So, Andy, great stuff. I appreciate you sharing your story, sharing about the opportunity there, being generous with your time. I'd encourage everybody to go connect with Andy on social media. And yeah, certainly if you're a roofing contractor and you want to grow your business, you need to take advantage of all this information and expertise. So Andy, thanks so much for being on the podcast, man. This was great.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
All right. If you want to go deeper and get the Roofing Business Masterclass videos that Andy and I recorded, then go to constructionleadingedge.com/roofing. Get your copy of that. You'll get instant access to that. They are free. There are 4 or 5 videos that we recorded. You will learn how to get around the skilled labor shortage. You'll learn how to create more time so you can grow your business. You'll learn how and why you might want to make the jump into commercial roofing. And you'll find out about this niche inside the commercial roofing industry that is high margin and you probably want to take advantage of. And you'll find out more about the Choice Roof Contractor Group and the Conklin opportunity that Andy mentioned briefly. So go to constructionleadingedge.com/roofing to get those masterclass videos. Make sure you get your free trial of Field Chat at fieldchat.com/EDGE. And speaking of free stuff, go get your free 10-day trial of the Construction Business Accelerator program. Get those results that Ryan got by changing his sales process. You can get your free 10-day trial at constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. Thank you for the ratings and the reviews. I'm going to read one from Jesse Lane TV that says, Todd DeWalt is the man. Very valuable information for construction business owners. I highly recommend this podcast and all the content that Todd produces. Thanks, Jesse. I appreciate that. Jesse's actually going to be on the podcast before long, so you're going to want to listen to that podcast. But if you could take about 60 seconds, go into the podcast player of your choice, leave a rating and a review. I would greatly appreciate it. That gets the word out to the rest of the world about the podcast because I want to help as many people as I can. So if you need to reach me or if you want these show notes, let's start with that. For all the show notes and the links that we talked about, all you got to remember is go to constructionleadingedge.com/114. constructionleadingedge.com/114. You can get all the links, all the show notes. And if you need to reach me, if you'd like to schedule a free call or get any of my resources, go to constructionleadingedge.com. You'll see some red buttons there on the homepage where you can get resources. You can schedule a call with me. I would be glad to help out however I can. Thanks so much for listening. I will talk to you next time.